Did you know that there's been a 3,000% increase in deepfake-related phishing and fraud incidents? Imagine a world where seeing is no longer believing, where your favorite celebrities endorse products they've never heard of, and you transfer $25 million to criminals who look like your boss, but they aren't your boss. From political manipulations to ethical concerns, we'll discuss how these hyper-realistic digital forgeries reshape our perception of truth in the digital age. We will delve into how deepfakes are created, how to spot a deepfake, and discuss the opportunities and challenges. Welcome to Emerging Tech Unpacked, a podcast series about setting the record straight on emerging tech myths and profiling the career stories of incredible women leaders in STEM. My name is Lucy Lin, and today we'll be unpacking the fascinating topic of deepfakes with intelligence expert Emerald Sage. Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Lucy Lin, and today we'll be learning about deepfake technology with our expert Emerald Sage, who is the head of intelligence services at Combine. Welcome to Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast, Emerald.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy. It's a pleasure.
Well, Emerald, I met you at CyberCon, which is a cybersecurity conference, and I think that you are one of the most interesting people that I know. I know that you have worked over 13 years for an Australian national security and intelligence organisation. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that global comparison is and what type of government organisation that may be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like you said, about 13 years for an Australian federal government security and intelligence organisation. Mostly domestic facing issues or national security issues that Australia was facing or confronting. If you wanted to draw an international comparison, you could maybe look at an organisation like the Federal Bureau of Investigations in the US or maybe the Security Service in the UK.
Okay, so I'm hearing it's similar to kind of like the FBI or MI5.
Yeah, you could make that comparison. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's make that comparison. Win. So, as an intelligence expert, which I think is super interesting, you're now at Combine. Can you give us a little bit of a brief overview about what is the role of an intelligence is, and then also what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. And a great question, by the way. And I think that, intelligence means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For example, when I was referring to my role as an intelligence expert working for the government, that could mean anything from horizon scanning to forecast strategic threats that Australia may face into the future to, looking at the intersection between technology and national security and what sort of issues those would raise. In my current company, Combine, I've been head of Intel Services there for about 4 years now. What it has meant there has also changed and evolved over time to meet sort of market demands and needs. Initially, when I joined, it meant conducting online investigations for clients that didn't have that capability in-house. And an online investigation, could be anything from, a due diligence report for, a corporate VIP to the security situation of a particular area that a group of people might be deployed into to conduct work. Or it could be looking at the security around a particular event. It has definitely evolved. So now, whilst I still do that, my main focus is on collecting and analysing data and very specific data sets that solve business problems.
Interesting. Okay. So there sounds like there's so many facets of what an intelligence expert is. But it sounds like a lot of it is research, it's data, it's analysing, it's collection.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's so much to unpack there, so I'd love to talk more about it. I am just reflecting back, and you talked about MI5, and to be honest, I'm a massive James Bond fan. And can I ask if you are kind of like the Moneypenny like office espionage role that is able to assist with like research and information in terms of national security, law enforcement, and defence intelligence? Is that the type of role that you were doing or you are doing?
Sometimes. I think you'll find that for a lot of intelligence professionals, there can be elements of the James Bond to the role that they perform. Then, you never see James Bond doing all of the paperwork or, submitting his receipts to, claim his expenses. So there's also a lot of, mundane sort of administrative work that goes into supporting the real world sort of operations, if you will. So whilst I did conduct, those real world operations, I also had to do a lot of the administrative tasks that go along with them. And there were also times when, the organisation didn't require, the James Bond sort of activities from its officers and needed them to do things like, look at how the organisation could better recruit people of more diverse backgrounds. So you wouldn't typically think that, that would be or fall within the purview of an intelligence officer's role, but it can definitely sometimes be something that you find yourself doing.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So the common misconception of what a spy is in the media, and obviously I'm just watching too many TV shows.
Oh, but they're so fun.
Yeah, I know. It would be so funny if I saw James Bond doing an expense, one of those blockbuster things.
Absolutely. The real Bond.
So I'd love to hear about technology because obviously, technology has changed so many industries. Has it also changed intelligence gathering and analyses as well in recent years? And, you work with a lot of data. Has it been easier to extract accurate information from all the vast amount of data that you are needing to go through as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you hit on that really important point of data. So in terms of, has technology changed intelligence gathering? Absolutely it has. And it's made it both harder and easier. And most of that comes down to data. So, the internet, AI-enabled data collection tools have definitely made, collecting larger volumes of data easier, faster, more efficient. However, because there is so much out there in terms of, data volumes, it can be really hard to determine, what is accurate, genuine data that's come from a reliable source and what is data that has been deliberately manipulated to, misrepresent something or to misinform you. So that's definitely a challenge that technology has posed to intelligence gathering for sure.
I know there's just so much out there. And then has it changed in any way? Like, has it made it easier for you, or do you think it's actually made it harder for you?
Yeah, look, both at the same time, both simultaneously is the short answer to that question. It's kind of, it's created tools that can, more quickly and more efficiently collect data. So data collection can be a very manual process. So tools can definitely speed that up and make it more effective and efficient. But you're still stuck when it comes to determining, what's the good data or reliable data versus, what's the bad data. Because ultimately you want to collect data to turn it into intelligence. So, information that you can use to guide decision making. So you want to be using only the good data to do that. So it's made it, technology's definitely allowed us to do it faster and more effectively, but we're still confronted with this issue of, having to analyse or assess what is accurate and what is not.
I think that's really fantastic, and I think you're the perfect person to talk to us about deepfakes because I love this topic. I think it's really interesting, but a lot of deepfakes is needing to identify if it's real or not data. Exactly. Like, if it's a real piece of information, is it, it's mostly it's not. So, and I actually think this topic is really interesting, but scary at the same time. So do you come across deepfakes a lot in your intelligence work? And then can you tell us exactly what deepfakes is and also how do they actually work?
Yeah, great question. And again, much like the vagaries of the definition around intelligence, I think that, a lot of people have a different definition for deepfake. The one that's used by the Australian government or the Australian E-Safety Commissioner is essentially that they define a deepfake as a digital photo, video or sound file of a real person that has been edited to create an extremely realistic but false depiction of them doing or saying something that they did not actually do or say. So I think that's a pretty good and succinct definition, but I would note that it's very focused on, being content that relates to a person. The US government, for example, has a definition that's a little more broad and basically just says, any synthetic media that utilises a form of AI to create believable, realistic videos, pictures or audio. So it doesn't necessarily need to be of a person. It could be, an event or a location. So I think that, you can use both definitions, but the essence there is that, a deep fake is a form of synthetic media.
That's so interesting. I've never thought about an event or a location deepfaked, and I only just kind of think about it as a person.
Yeah.
Are you saying that you could, deepfake an event that never happened or something?
Potentially. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And it's like, as we talk about deepfakes, there are so many different types of deepfakes that I see. There's images, there's audio, there's video. Can you tell us about each of these? And also, can you tell us how they have evolved over the years as well? Because, this technology has been around for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. So I actually think that the term deepfake was originally coined, and again, this is just based on some very rudimentary research I was doing online, but was coined all the way back in 2017 by a random user on a web forum, and their username was Deepfake, and they essentially used the term to describe themselves manipulating an image. So essentially, putting someone's face on an image of a different person. So essentially face swapping. So yeah, your point about it being around for a while, absolutely, 2017. It's really, I think the pace of development has really accelerated though, particularly in the last couple of years. And the way in which it has developed or the accelerated development is really becoming more realistic. So the way in which the technology that supports it being able to more accurately mimic, a real object or person would be the key distinctive feature, I think, or technology feature.
So it's still relatively new in terms of the technology, it being deepfake. 2017 isn't that far ago. But I think there's probably a lot of different types of technology that is similar. Like, I think CGI, I think VFX, like special effects. Do you think they're a type of deepfake? Because they kind of do similar things. Like, we were having a chat about this. Like, I saw Alien Romulus recently, and one of the main actors, the android, Ian Holmes, he died in 2020, and yet they CGI'd him back into the film, which was only released, in 2024. So do you call that a type of deepfake as well? Because CGI and special effects has been around for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. And your point about, deepfake technology not just being about images is a really good one. So, you could argue that it's also, video, there's audio elements that comprise deepfake technology. And absolutely, I would say that, is an example of the entertainment industry using or harnessing deepfake technology to entertain people. And is there any other positive applications you can think of? Like, I guess they had to get Ian Holmes's family's permission to do this. And I heard James Earl Jones's family also gave his permission to also do the Darth Vader for the new Star Wars as well. So I think from an entertainment perspective, these things can be positive because, we still have all these actors, and obviously, young Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, in the last film, I was like, oh my God, he looks like he's back in the 1970s and 80s. Entertainment, I think, is some positive ones. Can you think of any other positive examples of maybe, deep fakes or CGI, etc.? Yeah, I think that there are some medical applications as well. So again, I was doing some rudimentary research online, and there were some suggestions that some deepfake technology was being used to reconstruct voices for people who'd lost their ability to speak. So that, is I guess a really powerful, if it's accurate and true, a really powerful demonstration of, deepfake technology being used for positive outcomes.
Wow. So is that someone who, what do you mean they've lost their ability to speak? As in they've lost their voice box or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, may have lost their voice box or, had some sort of injury or something occur. So the article unfortunately didn't go into, exactly how the technology was harnessed or used, but rather just sort of noted that there are use cases in the medical sector where deepfake technology can definitely support people.
No, that's really great. And then, we've heard a lot about all the negatives and the scary one. Can you give us some more examples about things that you've seen that has been not as positive, maybe a bit more negative and a bit more scary as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess this also talks to, the evolution of deepfake technology as well and the advances towards realism that AI-driven deepfake technologies made in the last couple of years. So back in 2022, I think it was, a video was uploaded to YouTube of Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, essentially admitting defeat. So he essentially declared that, Ukraine had lost the war against Russia and that Russia had declared sovereignty over Ukraine. Now, this video was very quickly revealed to be a fake. Obviously, Zelensky himself came out and, said, I never said those things. And that video wasn't recorded, certainly wasn't recorded of me. And there were certain telltale signs about the image of Zelensky himself in the video. So he, was very stoic. He didn't move very much. Some of his facial expressions and mannerisms weren't very characteristic of him. So it was an example of deepfake technology that wasn't, particularly realistic. However, it was being used for grave, geopolitical consequences. So essentially, a lot of pundits and political experts think that, it was generated by Russia in order to undermine Ukraine and sort of eat away at their morale and kind of impact or influence the geopolitical status quo. So I guess, not a particularly great use of that underdeveloped technology at that point in time, but could potentially have had, some really grave and far-reaching consequences. More recently, in 2024, I think we were talking about this at CyberCon, but the example where the finance worker from a multinational firm was tricked into paying something like $25 million to fraudsters, and essentially it was based on, deepfake technology being used in a video conference call. And because, the technology had developed so much from 2022 to 2024, the individuals who appeared in this video seemed so realistic and believable to this particular individual that he actually fell for the trick, if you will, and transferred the money. So an example, I guess, of more advanced deepfake technology being successfully deployed, but rather than for far-reaching geopolitical ends, more for financial gain.
Yeah, and I thought that example was really interesting, and I was like, how can you be in a video conference and you not know? Like, the technology's gotten so good that you don't know your boss is real or not, and then you kind of just transfer that money, So
yeah, absolutely.
I've got another one actually. So I was reading about this, and it involves Bruce Willis, and Bruce Willis has now got dementia. And
that's right.
I don't know if you heard about this one, you know about this, but he was involved in a deepfake controversy as well, because he has dementia, so he hasn't worked in a while, and he did do some advertising with a company called Deepfake to map a digital version of his appearance onto another actor in a commercial for cell network Megaphone. But then he's then been tied into other commercials as well. And then, he's been in other ads where he's kind of like being tied to the back of a yacht, growling Mississippi in a Russian accent. And then basically it's just like become like, well, does this mean that as an actor, you have given away your identity? And I think that's where it becomes really scary, because there's been a lot of kind of like actors who's then use their own self and imagery to become avatars, and then they've kind of like, you know, anyone can put an AI voice on them, or, you know, any other images on there, and you kind of like lost your identity in that sense. So it was really interesting, this Wired article I was reading, and it was called like, who owns Bruce Willis, basically, because, you know, now it's like, you know, his image is out there being used by this company into a lot of these other commercials, rather than this is one, you know? And I think that's kind of scary as well. So, you know, from that identity perspective.
No, I completely agree with you. Yeah, look, I'd find it really difficult to be an artist at this point in time, because, yeah, intellectual property theft is a very significant issue that everyone's facing. And, you know, the tech companies that drive and develop deepfake-enabled technology have to tread this really fine line between, you know, pushing the bounds of what's possible and you know, really encouraging, you know, ingenuity and innovation, and allowing people a platform from which they can exercise free speech and freedom of expression. But at the same time, they've got a responsibility to protect people and to protect people's intellectual property. So, yeah, a great example of a really complex problem.
So it's kind of like an ethical issue, you know, and it's like, well, can you tell us a little bit more about other ethical considerations that we should be thinking about, especially around this technology, you know, when you've got identity on the line, when you've got, you know, theft and fraud and all these other criminal activities? Is there any other ethical considerations to think about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say another big one is misrepresentation. So I think you alluded to the use case previously where, and this is happening a lot of companies that are investigating the use of deepfake technology are finding this is a very common use of the technology, of women, their images and video of them being manipulated in order to show them, you know, performing explicit actions. Yeah, absolutely. This is a massive, massive issue. And again, you know, I think we need to do more as a collective and as a society in order to protect people against that sort of exploitation. We also, you know, hit on with the Zelensky example, you know, you could argue that falls under misinformation or disinformation. I think that, you know, that's a real ethical concern when it comes to the application of deepfake technology. So, you know, malicious actors deliberately manipulating images or videos in order to further their own objectives that you know, might ultimately harm our democracy or harm our national security. So, yeah, you're right. You're spot on in pointing out the fact that there are a whole raft of different ethical issues and considerations around the application of deepfake technology.
I do find that sometimes this tech is quite disturbing, and, you know, I think in my opinion, like, you know, it really affects my ability to trust, I think, you know. So I now sometimes question and go, well, is it what I see and hear in the media, social media, even people in real life, like not just celebrities, say, but, you know, there's all these examples you've heard of people who's been fooled by deepfakes, and like they've been used for blackmail, used for, as you were saying, you know, women, revenge porn, say. But, you know, some of it is not real. Like a lot of students have been manipulated by their own classmates, which I find really disturbing. So as deepfakes become more and more indistinguishable from reality, do you think we really need to rethink the concepts of evidence and truth?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now is, you know, a really good time to be thinking about those concepts and, you know, having conversations about them. And, you know, you can get, you know, quite philosophical in this space, I think, and you know, ponder questions like, you know, what constitutes reality in the digital age. I remember at university, I decided to do a philosophy subject, and that subject was dedicated to exploring the works of a guy called Bertrand Russell, who's a fairly well-known philosopher. But he really explored the question of, you know, what is real and how do we, I guess, distinguish between appearance and reality. So he used, I think, in one of his writings, this, classic example of a table. I might look at a table and to me it looks like it would be solid, hard, brown. But if I was looking at it through, a special microscope, I would see that, it's made up of different particles. If I was looking at it, in a different light setting, I might say that it's not brown, it's actually, black or a lighter grey. So essentially the point is that, reality, it's not always what it seems. And so we really need to kind of continually question what we're looking at, what we're exposed to, and what we're consuming when we're in an online environment, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And it's really hard to kind of do it ourselves unless we kind of, I think you have to kind of stop and pause and think critically and say, well, is this true? Is this not? I also wanted to know, you do a lot of, you talk about intelligence and data. How do you determine what's good data and what's not good data? Because it's kind of like what we're talking about here. It's what do you know is the truth versus what's not real and what's not true,
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, a lot of it comes down to, analytical principles and critical thinking. And I think that, we really need to go back to basics and educate ourselves around, what is good and rigorous analysis, and how can I apply that to, new and emerging technologies and scenarios and situations that are constantly evolving. And there are some fantastic resources out there that really teach and encourage people to learn more about analysis and critical thinking. For example, there's a great podcast. We all love podcasts, obviously. So, yeah, there's a great podcast by an organisation. I'm just trying to remember what they're called again. It's something like the Foundation for Critical Thinking. And essentially, each podcast elaborates on or, educates people on different principles on critical thinking. So, yeah, there's a ton of material out there that can help us educate ourselves and be more informed about, what good analysis is, how to apply it, etc.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I find that really interesting, because from that truth perspective, I find it really hard. So how else can people spot a deep fake? What are your telltale signs? Are we still looking at our hands? Are we still looking at, what was the other thing? I know that fingers or something was a telltale sign. Is there anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the way in which I like to sort of think about, protecting myself from deepfake technology or being able to identify deepfake technology in the wild or in the online content I consume is by kind of splitting it up into, a human response and a tool-based response. So in a human response, particularly when we're looking at visual media, so, photos or videos, there are certain characteristics that can give you a clue as to, how the footage was manufactured. So, for example, there's been some really good work actually by Australia's Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, or the CSIRO, on this. And they've said that some things you can look for is whether in a video, for example, audio is properly synced to movement in the video, specifically, someone's lips if they're talking. Other things, unnatural blinking or flickering around the eyes, odd lighting or shadows that's not consistent with, a light source or where the light's coming from in a particular piece of footage. Facial expressions might not necessarily match an emotional tone in the individual's speech if it's a video of a person. Also, things like, accessories that people might be wearing. So, perhaps earrings don't quite match, or, there might be something a little bit wrong with, a particular hair accessory. But you're absolutely right. There's always the fingers. You can always try, and if you can see hands in an image or video footage, try and count how many fingers there are. Most AI models have some problems there, definitely. In terms of tools, a lot of AI technologies use what's called watermarking. So it's a process of embedding like some kind of unique signal into the AI model. And there are some companies out there that are developing tools that can detect those watermarking features. ChatGPT is actually a great example. So in addition to developing, the ChatGPT tool itself, they're also simultaneously developing a tool called Zero GPT. And what that tool allows you to do is input a piece of text and ask it whether it was generated by ChatGPT or not. So really, really useful for teachers, trying to determine whether essays have, been written by AI or not.
Well, that's really good to know, because I'm at a university. So, wow, Zero GPT, hey? It's good to know if the students are cheating.
That's it. Exactly. There are also some fantastic audio tools out there. There's a free one called Audacity, and essentially what it allows you to do is detect some characteristics in voices that are inauthentic or synthetic. And I've myself done a test of this piece of software, and it actually worked. So I manipulated, I gave it, a voice track that hadn't been manipulated of my own voice, and then a voice track where I had manipulated it using AI, and it was able to distinguish differences in the two pieces of audio, even though I couldn't to the human ear. And they're also
how do they know? Is it because they know the data's been a bit contaminated, or it's been like a clip of two different things? I don't know, how did
it's quite clever technology. I think that it essentially detects some differences in the wavelength of the audio, or the pitch of the audio. I'm probably massacring the technical jargon here, but it can essentially, what I'm trying to say is it can detect really subtle changes that the AI makes to the voice that we might not be able to detect. So it's really cool technology. I also love fact checkers. So, particularly where deepfake technology is being used for malicious purposes, so, disinformation or misinformation. If you've got a video and the person in the video is, trying to tell you that something's happened and you want to verify that, Google has a fantastic fact checker. If you just type in, Google fact check, it'll take you to the fact checker site. If you input, that event into the fact checker, it can tell you whether it has detected media that's been uploaded that is, inaccurate, and you can then, make a judgment or a decision based on having that additional contextual information. So tons of tools out there. There are some great little things that you can detect with the human eye.
Yeah, and that's really good. I didn't know about the Google fact checker as well, so that's really good to know. So it's a website, is it? And you just punch it in, you say, it's a real event, or is this a real piece of content? And then they search the internet to see if there's other links. Yeah, how that works. Okay, great.
Pretty much, absolutely, and search really large data repositories to see whether that piece of media has been referred to as being fake elsewhere.
So is that what you're doing as part of intelligence work, like needing to verify all this information and then needing to data check and fact check that as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So verifying information, fact checking is really a key cornerstone of good analysis. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, great. So good. So, we were talking a little bit about regulatory. So from a regulatory perspective, how do you, because we're moving so fast with this rapidly evolving technology, how can our laws keep pace with all these changes? And what roles do you think policy makers and tech companies should play in regulating some of these deepfakes?
Yeah, that's another great question. Look, I think by and large, policymakers really struggle to, remain current with the pace of technology innovation. Innovation, it's happening so quickly, and there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of policy making that through no fault of the policymakers really slows the process down. Having said, I think that, the Australian government is taking steps and measures in order to combat the misuse of deepfake technology. So in 2019, there was an amendment made to the Criminal Code Act of 1995, which basically made it illegal to distribute deepfake content depicting images of people without their consent. There's also a raft that's being done. I mentioned the e-safety commissioner before. There's a raft of things that are being done around the e-safety commissioner and the Online Safety Act of 2015. Essentially, the e-safety commissioner now has the ability to stop platforms from spreading deepfake content, which is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I think that there is definitely more that can be done. And I think that, our policymakers should definitely be reviewing, all legislation that can potentially impact the misuse of deepfake technology, and they should be looking at ways in which, they could perhaps attach amendments to that legislation or even consider new pieces of legislation. I also think that, and I think I've alluded to this before, the technology providers need to, take a more active stance in developing deepfake detection technologies as well. But then I think that
like the blue ticks, saying this, or not blue tick or a different color or something, say this is a fake piece of content or etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely something that they could be doing. They could also be, creating tools much like the ChatGPT, like a video equivalent of that tool that could tell you, hey, this piece of video footage, has been generated using this piece of technology that, is a piece of deepfake technology. That would be really useful and really beneficial. And there are strides being done or strides being made in that direction, which is really, really heartening to see. I think, though, bringing the conversation back to, analysis, I think that, we as the consumer, we also play a massive role as well. I think that, we can definitely do more to sort of educate ourselves and to, become, more, better critiques maybe.
Yeah, and hence why I wanted to do this podcast, because I think we're going to get more and more deepfakes, or we're going to be exposed to more and more deepfakes. And, and hence why I wanted to do this podcast, because I want to educate as many people about what it is, but also, some of these ways of protecting yourself. So, yeah, let's talk about that. So how do you protect yourself from some deepfake threats? And what advice would you give to someone who is maybe dealing with one right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, getting back to this point of, educating yourself, developing critical thinking and analysis skills. There are tons of free resources out there that we can use to do that. So I mentioned that podcast earlier before, but there's also some really, really great articles. I think the Harvard Business Review has a really good one. The International Association of Law Enforcement Intelligence Analysts in the US have provided access to a fantastic book called The Psychology of Intelligence Analysis, which is really good. I'm more than happy to provide links to all of these resources so that you can pop them up on your website after the podcast. But yeah, so really harnessing, these things that are freely available to us in order to, improve our ability to detect the malicious use of deepfake technology. It is incredibly important, I think. And also just realize that if you do get exploited by deepfake technology, it's really scary. It's really confronting. And quite often I think that people can feel a bit too foolish or a bit too scared to kind of speak up. I think, don't feel like you're alone or in a minority. So many people get targeted by malicious deepfake technology. So, if you can reach out and speak to people that you know and trust, get advice from the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner, and other sort of relevant resources that are out there.
Is the e-safety commissioner, the office,
Yeah.
Are they the best place to go to in terms of reporting something like that?
Yeah, well, there's certainly one avenue that you can use, and obviously it depends upon the nature of the targeting or the compromise. If it's something that endangers someone's safety or well-being, you'd want to make the police your first port of call or some sort of emergency response assistance. But yeah, the e-safety commission is a great resource in terms of understanding the broader strategic issues around the malicious use of deepfake technology.
So who do you think should be held liable for damages by these malicious deepfakes? Like, do you think it should be the creator, or do you think it should be the platform that it's hosted on? Maybe even both, actually.
Yeah, again, another fantastic question. I think first and foremost, when we talk about sort of liability or legal responsibility, I personally would suggest that it should definitely be the creator. They're the reason why the deepfake content is there in the first place, and particularly if they've generated that content with a malicious intention to, harm someone. I absolutely think that, the buck stops with them. However, when we talk about a legal responsibility being separate from an overall responsibility or duty of care, I think that, the platforms definitely have a duty of care or a responsibility to ensure that, where they detect malicious deepfake technology on their platforms, that they do remove that technology and take measures to make right any harm that's been caused.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they know that it is a deep fake technology, it should be removed and taken down.
Yeah.
I know that some of them are funny and they're memes and entertainment, but it's really hard. You go, it could be positive, it could be entertainment, and then other things is very harmful. It's very disturbing. So, it's something I think is super fascinating, and that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this topic. So where do you see this technology evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I'm really excited to sort of see what quantum technology does, or the impact that quantum technology has on AI. I think that quantum technology is still in its sort of relatively early stages, but as it becomes more developed, I think it's going to definitely increase the speed, capacity, and potentially even the capability of AI. So at the moment, I guess, some practical explanations of what this might look like. At the moment, AI, machine learning, sort of large machine learning models essentially require a massive amount of data to basically analyze that data for the tasks that you want it to complete. But with the help of quantum, it could potentially handle those vast volumes of data and the analysis of that data much faster. And it could also allow AI to focus on, I guess, multiple analyses at the same time. So allow it to, be more effective and more efficient. I think that with improvements in quantum, there will be some fairly significant changes to the speed and efficiency of AI and what it can do. And then that will, consequently flow on to deepfake technology as well. And I think it will certainly contribute to making deepfake technology appear even more realistic than it is now.
No, okay. Is that bad?
Yeah, look, good and bad. I think it completely depends on the use case and the end user of the technology. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I think we have to unpack quantum at some point. That's a mind-boggling subject that I think we definitely need to learn more about. Yeah. So I kind of want to change it back to you. Emerald, I noticed that you have a undergraduate degree in a Bachelor of Science and Arts, majoring in history and geology. So my question is, how did you get into the intelligence space with those degrees? And especially, I'm very interested in getting more women and girls into STEM industry. So tell us more about your journey and how you got into intelligence.
Yeah. For me, it's really about luck and curiosity, or maybe not luck, but just seizing opportunity and curiosity. So it was funny, we talked about Indiana Jones before. When I was young, I grew up on, a good steady diet of Raiders of the Lost Ark, all the latest and greatest, Temple of Doom. And I really wanted to, that kind of stuck with me, and I wanted to be Indiana Jones after I graduated high school. So decided to do a degree in archaeology, but then very quickly discovered that, they don't give you a whip and they don't give you a hat. They, sit you in a room and get you to sort pottery for 5 hours straight. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So wasn't quite what I had anticipated. But yeah, I had been studying history and geology along with archaeology and really loved those two other subjects. And so decided to major in history and geology. So hence the double degree. Realised a little bit too late though that, that degree would probably only qualify me for a career in academia or, working in the mines. And at that point in my life, those possibilities weren't really, something I wanted to explore. And so I had a conversation with a friend who said, why don't you just apply for different government graduate programs and see what happens? So I did that and, just happened to get the job with the Security and Intelligence Organisation. And absolutely loved my time there. Did some things that you'd never do anywhere else and met some truly wonderful and remarkable people. So, that's sort of my origin story, if you will. Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones, my God. It's Indiana Jones or James Bond, I say.
Love it.
So, yeah, you did talk about that. It's remarkable people, I think, working in intelligence. Obviously, you need to have intelligence to work in intelligence, but you also need to be incredibly secretive. So I always wonder, how do you balance the need for secrecy with transparency? Because that's also, you are a government organisation after all. And, we are in a democratic society. So how do you balance the need for secrecy with transparency in a democratic society?
Yeah, I think in Australia we've got things, we've managed to get a really good balance, and that's because of the way in which I guess we've structured our national security apparatus. So I think that most of our security agencies know that, it's really important that, some information and capabilities remain secret and protected because, we don't want to jeopardize those capabilities. We don't want to jeopardize, really incredibly important relationships. We don't want to jeopardize, people who are putting their life on the line to, collect information out in the field. But at the same time, we need to reassure people that we're undertaking certain, activities that we can't talk about for a good reason. It's all done to serve and protect the Australian public against threats that will harm our national interests. And so we have the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security, and what their job is essentially to have a very detailed understanding of everything that, the security and intelligence community is doing in Australia. And making sure that they're doing what they do in order to fulfill that goal or that ultimate goal or objective, which is to, serve and protect the Australian public. So whilst, a lot of what our security and intelligence apparatus does isn't available to the Australian public, the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security is making sure that, everything is being done in the interests of the Australian people.
And I'm pretty sure, there's also a balance of being in an ethical dilemma, I think, in your line of work as well. Because have you ever faced a situation where that you've kind of been in an ethical dilemma, I guess? And what kind of safeguards are in place to maybe prevent abuse of intelligence capabilities, I'd say?
Yeah, look, I have. I've absolutely faced ethical dilemmas. For example, I've been asked to, and this sort of touches on, some of the themes we've been talking about around deepfake technology. I've had to use an assumed identity in order to get to know people that I normally wouldn't like or who I wouldn't agree with in my usual sort of, day to day.
That's just a normal workplace, isn't it?
Love it. Well, hopefully, that the people you don't like aren't, terrorists or people who are.
Oh, okay, those people. Yeah, no. I don't have to protect the Australian public.
Yeah, but no, sort of found myself in a situation where you've got to be someone that you wouldn't normally like, and you've got to, for all intents and purposes, pretend to hold opinions that you really don't agree with. But you're doing these things in order to elicit information about attack planning, essentially. And so you have to remind yourself of, your goal and objective in doing what it is that you're finding sort of ethically difficult to do. So, am I doing this for personal gain, or am I doing this because ultimately I want to stop bad things from happening to a lot of innocent people? And because, it's been the latter, I've been able to kind of reconcile myself to, short-term pain for long-term gain, if you will, for one of better words. So yeah, I think that's sort of how I've dealt with ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it's a whole nother layer when you're trying to fight the bad people, And I was just thinking, your work colleagues, but you're actually talking about real terrorists and national security. Most of the bad people, okay. So what kind of personal qualities do you think is really important for success in intelligence work? What kind of skills do you think, or qualities do you need?
Yeah, so I think that, a really strong moral compass, because I think that, you can derive a lot of strength and resiliency from that. So, in that scenario I was talking about just then, we can push ourselves to do things or sort of go above and beyond, if we have a strong belief there that, the end objective or goal is good or is going to make things better. So yeah, I think strong moral compass. I think definitely a sense of curiosity. You have to kind of want to learn and grow and be curious about things that you don't understand. And along with that curiosity, I'd say, a sense of adventure, like Indiana Jones. You need to, be willing to get out there and kind of embrace new learning and new situations and scenarios.
I'm assuming you're constantly needing to problem solve and think outside of the box as well, right? Because you're probably always in a situation where you've probably haven't yet been in before.
Yeah, definitely. There's certainly an element to that. I certainly learned a lot of my problem-solving skills from rigorous analytical training that happened on the job. So coming back to our point about, being able to spot deepfake technology and the online content we consume, a lot of it is about training ourselves in good analytical tradecraft and rigorous critical thinking. So absolutely, being able to develop those skills is essential for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. So last couple of final questions before we wrap up. So who apart from yourself is someone worth listening or listening to or learning from in the deepfake space? And how can others contact you if they want to find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there are so many infinitely smarter people than I out there. There's so true. There's an amazing individual. I think her name is Timnit Gebru. Essentially, her area of expertise. I don't know whether she still works for Google, but has definitely spent some time working in Google's sort of AI arm or organisation. And she's really interested in ethics. And, we had that discussion and sort of talked about ethics and AI research. But she's got some fantastic content on that. So I'd highly recommend, doing a Google for her name and looking at stuff that she's published. There's another guy called Hani Farid. So that's Farid is the spelling of his surname. And he's at UK Berkeley University in the US. He's provided a lot of input into US government, policy making around deepfake technology. So he's definitely a heavyweight. Closer to home, I mentioned the CSIRO earlier. They've got a particular organisation that falls under their purview called Data 61. And the team there are doing some great research. So if you you, type in to Google Australia and Data 61, they've got some fantastic articles. Again, University of South Australia, they've got some really good academics that are working on deepfake technology and all its implications. One of those individuals, Wolfgang Mayer, Mayer. Last but not least, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, they released an article a couple of years ago now called Weaponized Deepfakes. I think Catherine Manstead was one of the authors. And essentially, the article was incredibly provocative and thought-provoking. And you got to the end of the article and the authors noted that almost the entirety of the article had been generated by, AI technology. So... Yeah, it was a really interesting experiment.
Article then.
Exactly. It was a really cool experiment. So yeah, I would definitely research and read any material from those sources to be more informed for sure. Yeah. And I'm always open. If people want to reach out and have a conversation with me, more than happy. Easiest way is probably LinkedIn. I can guarantee I am the only Emerald Sage on LinkedIn, or at least I think I am the last time I checked. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I love chatting about deepfake technology and where it's going, and all the issues that we face.
Yeah, and I think there's so much opportunity and also so much scariness as well. So, oh my gosh, thank you, Emerald, so much for your time and also for your knowledge and expertise and your advice, because I have really enjoyed your insights today. As I said, I've been fascinated by this deepfake technology, and I think it's such an interesting subject, and I'm so glad we were able to unpack a little bit more about this technology and also hear your interesting career path within the intelligence industry. Thank you so much, Emerald, for joining us on Emerging Tech Unpacked.
It's been my pleasure, Lucy. Thank you so much.
Wow, what do you think about Emerald and her career as a real-life spy? From wanting to be an Indiana Jones to a female James Bond, I loved Emerald's breakdown of what an intelligence expert is, how she entered her career, and the important work she has done for national security, law enforcement, and defense intelligence. I also loved our conversation about deepfakes, the interesting entertainment opportunities to bring back dead actors who can continue to receive recognition and royalties for their contribution, and the dark side of deepfakes with challenges around fraud, misinformation, and identity theft. What are your thoughts about deepfakes? I'd love to hear about it in the comments section. For more information about the latest episodes and how to contact us for sponsorship, promotion, and guest speaking collaborations, visit our website, emergingtechunpacked.com. We are available in audio format on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube, and we have bonus content there. Make sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on our social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook, to stay updated with the latest news and content. You can contact me, and you can find me on LinkedIn by searching for Lucy Lin. We welcome all feedback and will be very grateful if you can help us grow and spread the word by forwarding this episode to a friend and giving us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope I've unpacked deepfakes for you to better understand this incredible new and emerging technology. See you in the next Emerging Tech Unpacked episode soon.